Today we are launching the Commodities and Development Report 2017, the third of a series of biannual reports that focus on specific themes and issues that are relevant for commodity-dependent developing countries. This year's edition focuses on the various linkages between developments on international commodity markets and economic growth and development. Commodity prices are closely related with growth and human development in commodity-dependent developing countries. Without policy change, low commodity prices pose a real threat. All of the countries in yellow, or orange rather, and red fall into the category of commodity-dependent developing countries. And as you can see, that is the case, for instance, for almost all of the African countries. Commodity prices and growth. The line in blue depicts the Unctad commodity price index, but you could really use any commodity index that is out there. And the red line is GDP per capita growth in developing countries. And by just looking at this graph, you can see how closely linked these two series are. Which of course means that volatility on international commodity markets translates directly into risk for growth and development. If you think about large swings in capital flows, such as induced by commodity price volatility, this can cause economic disruption, it can put pressure on the balance of payments. If you think about public revenue, government revenue in commodity-dependent economies typically depends to a large degree on revenues from commodities. So if commodity prices are lower than you anticipated, government revenue is going to be lower, which of course could undermine the fiscal balance, which could threaten debt sustainability, and in general is a threat for the continuity of public programs for development, for poverty alleviation. Commodity prices in 2030, and the key point here is that it seems that commodity prices are not going to be increasing by much by 2030. The only exception is crude oil. And that, of course, means two things. First, it's critically important to reduce risks associated with commodity dependence. So if commodity prices are bound to remain low, and currently commodity prices are much lower than where they were in 2011, for instance. So if these commodity prices remain low, then of course they are not a reliable driver of growth and development. Botswana versus Sierra Leone. This case study shows how strong institutions and a stable policy framework made the diamond industry a driver of development in Botswana, but of course not in Sierra Leone. And finally, a very interesting case on Zambia, which shows that economic growth during the commodity price boom of the 2000s did not contribute to poverty reduction. In particular, during the times where Zambia was experiencing very high GDP growth due to the high copper prices, the poverty rate and inequality actually increased. So this is a very good example for that growth alone is not enough to alleviate poverty. What you need is inclusive growth. So what are some of the policy recommendations that the report proposes? First of all, it's very important to build a resilient economy. This includes counter-cyclical fiscal policy, in other words, saving during times of high commodity prices, during times of windfalls, in order to be able to maintain development programs throughout periods of low commodity prices. Pursuing diversification, of course, in other words, reducing commodity dependence, includes both horizontal and vertical diversification. And of course, good governance as a basic prerequisite for the private sector being able to make the investments that are really needed to modernize and diversify an economy. Expanding linkages of commodity sectors with the local economy. In this area, recommendations include adding value, which is key to generate growth, but also increasing productivity. And the final point, promoting inclusive growth, which is, as the Zambia case has shown, not something that happens by itself. So growth is probably a necessary condition for poverty alleviation and for reaching the SDGs by 2030, but it is by no means a sufficient condition for that.